The sterile white corridors of Medical Station Zerion 7 hummed with the quiet desperation of failure. Through the reinforced transparasteel windows, the Andromeda Nebula painted the void in shades of purple and gold, but inside the station's most advanced trauma ward, only the pale blue glow of failing life support systems illuminated the scene. Kerathen lay motionless on the biobed, his towering 8-foot frame barely fitting the medical apparatus designed for smaller species. His chitinous exoskeleton, once a magnificent deep emerald that had earned him the title of Guardian Prime of the Valthek Confederation, now appeared dull and cracked like ancient pottery. Golden ichor seeped slowly from wounds that defied every healing technique known to galactic medicine. Dr. Zephyra, the station's chief medical officer and a Zentari renowned across 3 sectors for her surgical prowess, stepped back from the biobed with 4 of her slender blue arms hanging in defeat. Her large black eyes, capable of seeing across 17 different spectrums, couldn't hide the exhaustion that had settled in after 72 hours of continuous effort. "The neural pathways are still deteriorating," she announced to the assembled team of healers, her melodic voice carrying the weight of impending failure. "The quantum disruption from the Nethrak weapon has created cascade failures in his primary consciousness matrix." Around the medical bay, 19 other healers from across the galaxy's most advanced civilizations stood in various states of frustration. There was Dr. Morgeth, a crystalline silicoid whose very body resonated with healing frequencies. Healer Vextai, a gaseous nebulari who could manipulate matter at the molecular level. Even Master Physician Korveth, an ancient cerebrate whose psychic healing abilities were legend, shook his massive cranium in defeat. "I've tried every known regeneration protocol," Dr. Zephyra continued, her secondary arms manipulating holographic displays that showed Kerathen's vital signs in alarming decline. Cellular reconstruction, consciousness transfer, even attempted memory preservation. Nothing can reverse the quantum scarring. "Perhaps," suggested Dr. Morgeth, his crystal body chiming with harmonics, "we should contact the Valthek High Council. They should know their Guardian Prime is—" "Dying," finished Healer Vextai, her gaseous form swirling with anxiety. "The word is dying, Morgeth. We've been dancing around it for 3 days." Commander Thexvar of the station's security force, a massive Brutari warrior whose species served as the galaxy's premier enforcers, stood near the entrance with his arms crossed. His scarred hide bore the marks of countless battles, and his voice carried the gravitas of someone who had seen too much death. "Guardian Kerathen led the defense of Proxima Sanctuary," Thexvar rumbled. "He held the line against a full Nethrak battle fleet for 6 hours, while civilian transports evacuated 3 million refugees. He saved worlds, and we can't even save him." The medical bay fell silent, except for the rhythmic beeping of monitors and the soft hiss of life support systems. Each healer had exhausted their species' most advanced techniques. The quantum resonance chambers had failed. The bioreconstruction matrices had been overwhelmed. Even the legendary Phoenix protocols, reserved for only the most critical cases, had proven useless against the exotic weapon that had brought down the Guardian. Dr. Zephyra approached the biobed one more time, placing a gentle hand on Kerathen's massive forearm. Despite their different species, she had worked alongside Valthek Guardians for decades. They were the galaxy's protectors, beings of immense strength and unwavering honor, who stood as shields between the innocent and the dark forces that lurked in the void. "His consciousness is fragmenting," she whispered, reading the biodisplays. "Whatever the Nethrak did to him, it's not just destroying his body, it's unraveling his very essence. We have perhaps 6 hours before complete neural collapse." Master Physician Korveth, whose psychic abilities had once brought back beings from the very edge of death, lowered his massive head. "I can sense his pain," the ancient cerebrate said, his mental voice touching every mind in the room. "It goes deeper than flesh, deeper than thought. The weapon didn't just wound him, it poisoned the very concept of his existence." As if responding to Korveth's words, Kerathen's vital signs spiked momentarily, and his mandibles moved as though trying to speak. The assembled healers leaned forward, hoping for some sign of consciousness, some clue that might help them save him. But the moment passed and the Guardian Prime sank deeper into his unnatural coma. Far below in the depths of Medical Station Zerion 7, where the detention levels housed the galaxy's most dangerous prisoners, something ancient stirred in the shadows. Behind energy barriers designed to contain beings of immense power, golden eyes opened in the darkness, and a consciousness as old as stars themselves focused its attention upward, sensing the approach of death in the levels above. The 20 greatest healers in the galaxy had declared the case hopeless. They had no idea that hope sometimes came from the most unexpected places. 7 levels beneath the medical bay, in the maximum security detention center of Station Zirion 7, the air hummed with a different kind of energy. Here, behind barriers of pure force and quantum-locked containment fields, the galaxy's most dangerous beings waited in eternal imprisonment. Cell Block Omega housed only 12 prisoners, each one capable of destroying entire solar systems if freed. But in the deepest cell, behind barriers that required the combined power of 3 fusion reactors to maintain, something far older than destruction itself lay coiled in the darkness. The dragon had no name that any modern tongue could pronounce. The Galactic Council's records listed him simply as Specimen X1, ancient terrestrial apex predator. To the guards who rotated through the detention levels, he was just the beast, a relic from humanity's homeworld, captured during the first contact wars nearly 3 centuries ago. But as golden eyes opened in the perpetual twilight of his cell, the dragon remembered when stars were young and the first conscious minds reached toward the heavens with wonder instead of weapons. His massive form barely fit within the containment chamber, even coiled as tightly as possible. Scales that had once gleamed like burnished copper now appeared dull in the artificial lighting, and the great wings that had once carried him between worlds lay folded against his serpentine body. 300 years of imprisonment had taken their toll, but they had not broken what lived within. The dragon lifted his great head, ancient nostrils flaring as he caught a scent that spoke of pain, of golden ichor, and of approaching death. His consciousness, vast and layered with millennia of memory, reached upward through the station's hull and corridors, following the familiar essence of something he had not encountered for eons. "Valthek," he whispered, the word rumbling from deep within his chest, in a language that predated most galactic civilizations. His voice carried harmonics that resonated through the quantum foam itself, frequencies that the station's sensors couldn't detect, but that made the barriers around his cell fluctuate ever so slightly. Above, Guardian Kerathen lay dying, and the dragon could sense every moment of his agony. The great beast rose to his full height within the confines of his prison, his head nearly touching the energy ceiling that sparked and crackled 20 feet above the floor. For 3 centuries he had remained silent, enduring the occasional visits from xenobiologists who prodded and studied him like some curiosity from a primitive world. They saw only scales and claws, flame and fury. None had bothered to look deeper. "Guard!" the dragon called out, his voice carrying clearly through the containment field's harmonic frequencies. The word came out in perfect galactic standard, though with an accent that spoke of ages long past. Security Chief Malarek, a Drenthani whose species prided itself on military precision, looked up from his monitoring station in surprise. In all his years overseeing Omega Block, he had never heard the dragon speak. The creature's file indicated it was capable of communication, but it had remained utterly silent since his assignment began. Did that thing just... Malarek's aide, a young Tyrellian fresh from the academy, stared at the monitors in disbelief. "Guard," the dragon repeated, this time with more urgency. "I must speak with your medical staff." Malarek activated the external communication array, his webbed fingers dancing across controls with military efficiency. "Prisoner X1, you will maintain silence. Any further disturbance will result in increased containment protocols." The dragon's golden eyes fixed on the security station's cameras, and for a moment, Malarek felt something he had never experienced in 20 years of military service, the sensation of being truly seen. Not observed, not studied, but understood down to his very essence by an intelligence that dwarfed his own. "A guardian dies above us," the dragon said, his voice carrying a weight of sorrow that seemed to fill the entire detention level. 20 healers have failed because they see only symptoms, not cause. They treat the wound but ignore the weapon. They attempt to heal the body while the spirit bleeds. "How could you possibly know about..." Malarek began, then stopped himself. Prisoner files were classified, and the medical situation 7 levels above was on a need-to-know basis. "I know," the dragon continued, "because I can sense his pain, because his people and mine shared bonds that your kind cannot fathom. Because what your healers call impossible, I call a Tuesday afternoon 3,000 years ago." The Tyrellian aide leaned forward, his curiosity overriding protocol. "Chief, maybe we should follow procedures." Malarek cut him off sharply. "This creature is contained for good reason. The file says it destroyed an entire battle fleet during the first contact wars." The dragon's expression didn't change, but something subtle shifted in the air around his cell. The energy barriers flickered almost imperceptibly, and the temperature in the security station dropped by several degrees. "I destroyed a battle fleet," the dragon acknowledged, "because they were firing on a hospital ship filled with human children. Your records fail to mention that detail, I imagine." Malarek checked his monitors nervously. The containment field readings were still within normal parameters, but something felt different. There was a presence in the air now, ancient and patient, but no longer passive. "The Valthek Guardian above us suffers from quantum soul severance," the dragon continued, his voice taking on the cadence of someone reciting a diagnosis. "The Nethrak weapon that struck him wasn't designed to kill the body. It was engineered to shatter the connection between consciousness and form. Your healers are trying to repair a broken vase while ignoring that the water has already spilled. That's..." Malarek paused, accessing his security clearance to check the medical reports. His eyes widened as he read. "That's exactly what the chief medical officer reported. How could you know this?" The dragon settled back onto his coils, but his golden gaze never left the security cameras. "Because, Guard Malarek, some of us remember when healing was an art instead of a science, when the cure for a severed soul wasn't found in your machines, but in understanding what it truly means to be alive." In the silence that followed, the only sounds were the hum of containment fields and the distant vibration of the station's life support systems. But for the first time in 300 years, something had changed in the deepest cell of Omega Block. Hope, ancient and patient, had begun to stir. Security Chief Malarek stood in the sterile corridor outside Medical Bay Alpha, his scaled hide still damp with nervous perspiration. In 20 years of military service, he had never found himself in a situation quite like this, requesting an audience with the chief medical officer on behalf of a maximum security prisoner who claimed he could save a dying guardian. The medical bay's doors slid open with a soft hiss, revealing Dr. Zephyra hunched over a holographic display of neural pathways. Her forearms moved in a complex dance, manipulating data streams that represented Kerathen's deteriorating condition. The other healers had dispersed to their quarters for brief rest periods, leaving her alone with her frustration and the steady decline of her patient's vital signs. "Doctor," Malarek said, his voice carefully modulated to convey both respect and urgency. Dr. Zephyra didn't look up from her work. "Chief Malarek, unless this concerns station security, I really don't have time. We have perhaps 4 hours before complete neural collapse, and I've run out of conventional options." "That's actually why I'm here," Malarek replied, moving closer to the biobed where Kerathen lay motionless. The Guardian's once magnificent form seemed to have diminished further, his golden ichor now flowing so slowly that the medical sensors barely registered it. "It concerns one of the prisoners in Omega Block." This time Dr. Zephyra did look up, her large black eyes reflecting exhaustion and confusion. "Her prisoner. Chief, I'm trying to save a Guardian Prime, not deal with detention center issues. Prisoner X1 claims he knows what's wrong with the Guardian," Malarek said quickly before his courage could fail him. He described the exact condition, quantum soul severance, without accessing any medical files. "He says your healers are treating the symptoms, but not the cause." Dr. Zephyra set down her instruments and fixed Malarek with a stare that could have cut through hull plating. "Are you seriously suggesting that I consult with the detained criminal about the treatment of a Guardian Prime?" "I'm suggesting," Malarek said carefully, "that in 4 hours, Guardian Kerathen will be dead, and we'll have exhausted every conventional option. What harm could there be in hearing what the prisoner has to say?" The Zentari physician turned back to her patient, her secondary arms continuing to adjust the life support systems while her primary hands clasped together in thought. The biodisplays showed another slight decline in Kerathen's neural activity. At this rate, they had even less time than she had estimated. "Tell me about this prisoner," she said finally. Malarek consulted his portable display, calling up the classified file. "Specimen X1, captured during the first contact wars approximately 3 centuries ago. Classified as an ancient terrestrial apex predator, essentially a dragon from the human homeworld, responsible for the destruction of the cruiser squadron that first made contact with Earth." "A dragon," Dr. Zephyra repeated flatly. You want me to consult a dragon about advanced xenobiology. Doctor, with respect, the dragon described Guardian Kerathen's condition with more accuracy than our initial diagnostic team managed. He used terminology that doesn't appear in standard medical databases. Either he's the most well-informed prisoner in galactic history, or he actually knows something our healers don't. Dr. Zephyra was quiet for a long moment, her attention divided between Malarek's words and the steady deterioration of her patient's vital signs. Finally, she activated her communication implant. Dr. Morgoth, please report to Medical Bay Alpha immediately, and bring Master Physician Kerathen with you. Within minutes, the crystalline silicoid and the massive cerebrate had joined them in the medical bay. Dr. Morgoth's body chimed with curiosity, while Kerathen's psychic presence filled the room with questions before he had even spoken. Zephyra, what's this about? Dr. Morgoth asked. The neural readings haven't changed in the last hour. Chief Malarek has brought us an unconventional consultation opportunity, Dr. Zephyra replied, then quickly outlined the security chief's proposal. Master Physician Kerathen's mental voice touched each of their minds simultaneously. You wish us to speak with a dragon? The files on such creatures are fragmentary at best. Most xenobiologists classify them as semi-intelligent at most. Yet somehow this one diagnosed our patient's condition with remarkable precision, Dr. Zephyra countered. And frankly, colleagues, we are out of options. The quantum reconstruction protocol failed. The consciousness transfer matrix couldn't establish a stable link. Even the Phoenix Cascade showed no response. In less than 4 hours, we'll be preparing a body for return to the Valthek Confederation. Dr. Morgoth's crystalline form resonated with a low, thoughtful harmonic. I've studied the weapon signatures from the Nethrak attack. The quantum disruption patterns are unlike anything in our databases. If this dragon has encountered similar conditions, it's worth the risk, Doctor. Zephyra finished. Chief Malarek, what would be required to facilitate communication with the prisoner? Malarek felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. The containment protocols can accommodate holographic communication. The prisoner would remain fully secured, but you could speak with him directly. Then let's not waste any more time, Dr. Zephyra said, her forearms already working to prepare portable diagnostic equipment. If Guardian Kerathen dies because we were too proud to listen to unconventional wisdom, his death will be on our consciences forever. As the medical team prepared to descend into the depths of Station Zerion 7, none of them noticed the slight fluctuation in the biobed's readings. For just a moment, as if responding to some distant call, Kerathen's neural activity had spiked. Deep in Omega Block, the dragon had sensed their decision. After 3 centuries of silence, he would finally have the chance to practice the ancient arts that his kind had perfected when the galaxy was young. The question was whether 300 years of imprisonment had dulled his abilities beyond recovery, or whether some knowledge ran too deep to ever truly fade. The descent to Omega Block felt like traveling backward through time itself. The sterile medical corridors of the upper levels gave way to reinforced bulkheads and security checkpoints, each one a reminder that they were entering a realm designed to contain forces beyond conventional understanding. Dr. Zephyra carried her portable diagnostic equipment in 2 of her forearms, while the other 2 held detailed scans of Kerathen's condition. Beside her, Dr. Morgoth's crystalline body chimed softly with each step, his resonant frequencies betraying his nervous energy. Master Physician Kerathen brought up the rear, his massive form moving with surprising grace, while his psychic presence swept ahead, probing for any sign of deception or danger. I still can't believe we're doing this, Dr. Morgoth muttered, his harmonic voice carrying undertones of doubt. Consulting a prisoner about medical procedures that have stumped the galaxy's finest healers. Sometimes, replied Master Physician Kerathen, his mental voice touching each of their minds, the greatest wisdom comes from the most unexpected sources. In my 7 centuries of practice, I've learned that pride is often the greatest obstacle to healing. Security Chief Malarek led them through the final checkpoint, where additional guards had been stationed as a precaution. The energy barriers around Cell Block Omega hummed with increased intensity, their quantum locks reinforced to maximum security protocols. Remember, Malarek said as they approached the observation chamber, the prisoner remains fully contained at all times. The holographic communication system will allow you to speak directly, but physical interaction is impossible. They entered the observation room, where banks of monitors displayed every angle of the dragon's cell. Dr. Zephyra had reviewed the creature's file during their descent, But seeing him in person was entirely different. Even coiled within the confines of his prison, the dragon's presence filled the space with something that transcended mere physical size. "Activate the communication array," Dr. Zephyra instructed. The holographic projectors came online, creating a three-dimensional image of the medical team within the dragon's cell. For the first time in 3 centuries, the ancient being found himself in conversation with beings who had come seeking his help, rather than studying him as a curiosity. "Honorable healers," the dragon said, his golden eyes focusing on each of them in turn. His voice carried harmonics that seemed to resonate through their very souls. "I am grateful for your presence, though I wish the circumstances were less dire." Dr. Zephyra stepped forward, her scientific mind already analyzing the creature before her. "You claim to understand Guardian Kerathen's condition. How is that possible? Our medical databases contain no records of dragons possessing healing knowledge." The dragon's expression might have been a smile, if one could imagine such an expression on a face designed for entirely different emotions. "Your databases contain many gaps, honored physician. They record that my kind destroyed ships during your first contact wars, but they do not mention why. They note our physical capabilities, but they ignore our spiritual ones." "Spiritual?" Dr. Morgoth's crystalline form chimed with skepticism. "We're dealing with quantum-level cellular disruption, not matters of faith." "Are you?" the dragon asked, settling more comfortably onto his coils. "Tell me, crystalline one, what do you see when you examine the Guardian's wounds?" "Doctor." Morgoth consulted his portable scanner, reviewing the latest readings. "Cascade failure in the neural pathways, quantum decoherence in the cellular matrix, complete disruption of the consciousness-body interface." "Symptoms," the dragon interrupted gently. "All symptoms. Now tell me, what was Guardian Kerathen doing when he was struck by the Nethrak weapon?" Dr. Zephyra accessed her records. According to the battle reports, he was defending the evacuation ships from Proxima Sanctuary. He maintained a defensive position for over 6 hours, while 3 million refugees escaped. "And in those 6 hours," the dragon continued, "how many civilians did he personally save? How many evacuation pods did he guide to safety with his own hands?" "The reports mention approximately 47 direct rescues," Dr. Zephyra replied, confused by the direction of the questioning. The dragon nodded solemnly. 47 souls, each one precious, each one saved through his personal sacrifice. And when the Nethrak weapon struck him, what was he doing? Master Physician Korveth's psychic presence suddenly intensified as understanding began to dawn. According to the final sensor readings, he was shielding a damaged transport with his own body. The weapon struck him while he was using his life force to maintain the ship's failing shields. "Now you begin to understand," the dragon said, his voice taking on the cadence of an ancient teacher. "The Nethrak weapon didn't just attack his body, it struck him while his soul was stretched thin, connected to 47 other life forces he was protecting. The quantum disruption shattered not just his physical form, but the spiritual connections he had forged in that moment of supreme sacrifice." The medical team exchanged glances as the implications sank in. Dr. Zephyra's forearms moved rapidly as she accessed new diagnostic algorithms, searching for evidence of what the dragon described. "That's impossible," she said finally. "Our scanners show no trace of external spiritual connections. The damage is purely physical." "Your scanners," the dragon replied patiently, "are designed to measure matter and energy. They cannot detect the bonds of sacrifice, the threads of compassion that bind one soul to another." In the moment of his greatest heroism, Guardian Kerathen became connected to every life he saved. When the weapon struck, it severed those connections violently, leaving his consciousness fragmented across 47 different quantum states. Dr. Morgoth's body resonated with a new harmonic, one that spoke of dawning comprehension. If that were true, then conventional healing would be useless. We'd be trying to repair a consciousness that exists partially in 47 different dimensional spaces. "Precisely," the dragon said. "And unless those fragments are called back and rewoven into a single whole, Guardian Kerathen will die, not from his wounds, but from the incompleteness of his own soul." Master Physician Korveth's mental voice carried a note of awe and uncertainty. "Even if we accept this theory, how could such connections be restored? The refugees have been scattered across dozens of worlds. Some may have died in the weeks since the evacuation." The dragon's golden eyes seemed to look beyond the walls of his prison, gazing at something infinitely distant. with knowledge that your people abandoned long ago when you decided that technology could replace wisdom, with techniques that my kind mastered when your civilizations were still learning to count stars. You're saying you can heal him? Dr. Zephyra asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm saying, the dragon replied, that I can teach you to heal him. But first you must decide whether you trust the word of a monster who has spent 3 centuries in a cage. In the silence that followed, the only sound was the hum of containment fields and the distant heartbeat of a dying guardian 7 levels above. The observation chamber fell into a silence so profound that the hum of the containment fields seemed thunderous by comparison. Dr. Zephyra stared at the dragon through the holographic interface, her 4 arms unconsciously mimicking the gesture of deep contemplation that her species had practiced for millennia. 3 centuries, she said finally. You've been imprisoned here for 3 centuries. Why should we trust you now? The dragon's golden eyes held steady, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of countless years. Because, honored healer, trust is not earned through freedom, but through choice. I have spent 300 years in this cage, watching your people treat symptoms while ignoring causes, studying techniques while forgetting wisdom. I could have remained silent and let another guardian die to prove my point about your medicine's limitations. Dr. Morgoth's crystalline form resonated with a sharp, discordant note. Or you could be manipulating us, using our desperation to gain some advantage, some opportunity for escape. Could I? The dragon asked, gesturing with one massive claw toward the energy barriers that surrounded him. Your containment systems require 3 fusion reactors to maintain. These barriers were designed specifically to hold beings of my capabilities. What advantage could I possibly gain from helping you save a patient I will never meet? Master Physician Kerathen's mental voice touched their minds with the weight of deep consideration. I have been probing his thoughts since we arrived. There is no deception here, no hidden agenda. What I sense is grief, ancient grief, and a profound desire to prevent another death that he has the power to stop. Grief? Dr. Zephyra asked. The dragon lowered his great head, and for a moment the ancient being looked every one of his countless years. I have watched many guardians die, physician, not just Valthek, but beings from dozens of species who chose to stand between the innocent and those who would harm them. Each death diminished the galaxy a little more, made it a darker place for those who cannot defend themselves. He raised his head again, and his golden eyes seemed to burn with inner fire. Guardian Kerathen saved 47 lives in his final battle. 47 souls who will grow up, fall in love, create art, raise children, and make the galaxy brighter by their presence. But if he dies from wounds that could have been healed, those 47 will carry that guilt forever. They will know that a hero died for them, and nothing they accomplish will feel worth his sacrifice. Dr. Zephyra felt something twist in her chest, a recognition of truth that transcended medical training. She had seen it before, in the families of patients she couldn't save, the way survivors' guilt could poison entire generations. Even if we accept your diagnosis, she said carefully, how could we implement your suggested treatment? You speak of gathering soul fragments from across multiple dimensions. Our medical technology can barely map quantum states, let alone manipulate them. Your technology cannot, the dragon agreed, but life calls to life, physician. The connections I speak of were forged through sacrifice and love. They can only be restored through the same forces. Dr. Morgoth's harmonic frequencies shifted to convey confusion. You're speaking in metaphors again. We need concrete procedures, measurable processes. Then measure this, the dragon said, his voice taking on the cadence of instruction. The 47 people Guardian Kerathen saved are still alive. Scattered across the galaxy, yes, but alive. Each of them carries a fragment of his consciousness, a memory of the moment he chose their lives over his own safety. Contact them. Ask them to remember him. Not his title or his heroic deeds, but the specific moment when they felt his protection surrounding them. Master Physician Kerathen's mental voice carried a note of amazement. A collective memory recall spanning multiple star systems? The psychic resonance alone would be unprecedented. And as they remember, the dragon continued, as they focus their gratitude and their recognition of his sacrifice, those fragments will begin to respond. They will be drawn back to the source, seeking to reunite with the consciousness that saved them. But they will need a guide, a path back through the quantum maze created by the Nethrak weapon. Dr. Zephyra's arms moved automatically to her diagnostic equipment, as the implications sank in. "You're proposing to use the collective gratitude of 47 beings as a quantum locator beacon to guide consciousness fragments back to their source. That's impossible by conventional standards," the dragon finished. But Guardian Kerathen didn't save those people through conventional means. He used the oldest force in the universe, the willingness of one being to sacrifice everything for another. That force created the connections. That same force can restore them. Security Chief Malarek, who had been silent throughout the exchange, stepped forward. "Even if this works, how do we coordinate 47 people across dozens of worlds? The communications alone would take days." "Not if they're all contacted simultaneously, Doctor," Zephyra said, her mind already working through the logistics. "The Galactic Emergency Network has protocols for mass communication during crisis situations. We could reach them all within hours." "But would they respond?" Dr. Morgoth asked. "Most refugees want to forget traumatic experiences, not relive them." The dragon's expression might have been a sad smile. "They will respond, Crystalline One, because they are the kind of people Guardian Kerathen chose to save. People who understand that sometimes the greatest gift you can give is to remember someone else's sacrifice." A soft chime from Dr. Zephyra's diagnostic equipment broke the contemplative silence. Kerathen's vital signs had dropped another point, bringing him closer to the threshold from which there would be no return. "We're running out of time," she said urgently. "If we're going to attempt this, we need to start immediately." Master Physician Korveth's mental presence intensified as he focused on the dragon. "Ancient One, you have given us the theory, but who will serve as the guide you mentioned? Who among us has the capability to navigate quantum consciousness fragmentation?" The dragon's golden eyes fixed on the massive cerebrate with something approaching respect. "You do, Master Physician. Your psychic abilities are far greater than you know, but you will not be working alone." "What do you mean?" For the first time since their conversation began, the dragon rose to his full height within his containment cell, his presence suddenly filling not just the physical space, but something deeper, more fundamental. "I mean, honored healer, that some bonds transcend physical distance. If you are willing to trust a monster in a cage, I can guide you through techniques that were ancient when your species first looked to the stars." The energy barriers around his cell flickered almost imperceptibly as power beyond technology stirred in the depths of Station Zirian 7. Medical Bay Alpha had been transformed into something unprecedented in galactic medical history. Dr. Zephyra stood at the center of a complex array of communication equipment, her forearms coordinating simultaneous transmissions to 47 different worlds. The Galactic Emergency Network crackled with priority messages as refugee coordinators across dozens of star systems worked to locate the survivors of Proxima Sanctuary. Guardian Kerathen lay motionless on his biobed, vital signs so weak that the medical computers had already begun preparing final status reports. His golden ichor had slowed to barely a trickle, and the neural activity monitors showed patterns that typically preceded complete consciousness collapse. "Connection established with New Corinth," reported Dr. Morgoth, his crystalline form chiming with the harmonics of multiple communication frequencies. "That's 31 confirmed contacts, 16 more to go." Master Physician Korveth stood at the foot of the biobed, his massive cranium glowing with psychic energy as he prepared to attempt something that had never been tried in the history of galactic medicine. His mental voice touched the minds of everyone in the medical bay, carrying both determination and uncertainty. "The dragon's instructions are challenging. I must establish psychic contact with each refugee simultaneously, while maintaining a quantum lock on Guardian Kerathen's fragmented consciousness. The margin for error is essentially non-existent." 7 levels below, the dragon remained coiled in his cell, but his golden eyes were closed in deep concentration. Through the holographic communication link, his voice provided steady guidance, each word carefully chosen to convey techniques that had no equivalent in modern medical practice. "Remember, honored cerebrate," the dragon's voice resonated through the speakers, "you are not forcing the connections to return, you are simply providing a path home. The love that created these bonds will do the rest." Dr. Zephyra checked her chronometer. They had been working for 2 hours to establish contact with all 47 refugees. Some had been easy to locate, families who had registered with refugee assistance programs on established worlds. Others had proven nearly impossible to track down, scattered individuals who had chosen to disappear into the vastness of the galaxy rather than carry the memories of Proxima Sanctuary's fall. "Final connection established," announced the communications technician. "Survivor number 47, located on the mining station Kepler 442b. We have all of them." "Excellent," Dr. Zephyra said, then activated the general broadcast frequency. "This is Chief Medical Officer Zephyra of Medical Station Zerion 7. You have each been contacted because you were rescued from Proxima Sanctuary by Guardian Prime Kerathen of the Valthek Confederation. I need you to listen carefully to what I'm about to tell you. Across the galaxy, on worlds both civilized and frontier, in refugee camps and new homes, on mining stations and agricultural colonies, 47 beings stopped what they were doing and focused on the emergency transmission that had reached them. Guardian Kerathen is dying," Dr. Zephyra continued, her voice carrying across the void between stars. "He suffers from wounds received during the battle that allowed your escape from Proxima Sanctuary. Our conventional treatments have failed, but we believe there is still hope, a hope that depends on your willingness to remember." On New Geneva, an Altarian engineer named Zexthar felt his chest constrict as memories he had tried to forget came flooding back. The moment when Guardian Kerathen had lifted his damaged escape pod with his bare hands, carrying it to safety, while plasma fire rained around them. On Kepler Station, a human child named Sarah clutched her adoptive mother's hand as she remembered the giant armored figure who had shielded her family's transport with his own body, his golden eyes meeting hers through the viewport as he whispered, "You're safe now, little one. We need you to focus," Dr. Zephyra's voice continued, "not on the fear or the trauma of that day, but on the moment when you knew you were safe, the moment when Guardian Kerathen's protection surrounded you. Hold that memory clearly in your mind and let yourself feel the gratitude you carry for his sacrifice." In the medical bay, Master Physician Korveth's psychic presence began to expand, reaching across space to touch the minds of beings scattered across the galaxy. One by one he established contact, feeling the echo of their memories, the fragments of consciousness that Guardian Kerathen had unknowingly shared with each person he saved. "I can sense them," Korveth's mental voice whispered to the medical team. 47 points of light scattered across the darkness. Each one carries a piece of him. Memories, gratitude, the quantum imprint of his sacrifice. The dragon's voice provided steady guidance through the communication link. "Now comes the difficult part, Master Physician. You must create a resonance pattern that will call those fragments home, not through force, but through love. Show them the path back to the source." Korveth's cranium blazed with psychic energy as he began to weave connections across impossible distances. The effort was staggering, maintaining psychic contact with 47 different minds while simultaneously mapping the quantum disruption in Guardian Kerathen's consciousness. On worlds across the galaxy, the refugees felt something stirring within their memories. The moment of salvation that each carried began to glow with new intensity, and with it came a pull, a gentle tugging sensation, as if something precious was trying to find its way home. "It's working," Dr. Morgoth reported, his crystalline form resonating with harmonics of amazement. "I'm detecting quantum fluctuations in the Guardian's neural pathways. Something is responding." Dr. Zephyra watched her instruments in fascination and growing hope. The biodisplays that had shown nothing but decline for days were beginning to register new activity. Faint patterns of neural regeneration appeared on the monitors, growing stronger as the collective memory of 47 grateful beings focused across the galaxy. "The fragments are returning." Master Physician Korveth's mental voice carried exhaustion but also wonder. "I can feel them being drawn back, called home by the love and gratitude of those he saved. But the path is still unclear. The quantum damage is too severe." Deep in his cell, the dragon's golden eyes suddenly blazed with inner fire. His voice, when it came through the speakers, carried harmonics that seemed to resonate through the very fabric of space itself. "Then it is time for the final step," he said. "Master Physician, extend your consciousness toward this cell. I will guide you through techniques that predate your civilization by eons. Together, we will clear the path and bring Guardian Kerathen's soul home." The energy barriers around the dragon's cell began to fluctuate as forces beyond conventional understanding stirred in the depths of Station Zerion 7. Above, in the medical bay, Guardian Kerathen's vital signs showed their first signs of improvement in days. Across the galaxy, 47 beings held their memories of salvation like beacons in the night, calling their hero home. The moment Master Physician Korveth's consciousness touched the dragons across 7 levels of station infrastructure, Reality itself seemed to shift. The cerebrate's massive form trembled as his mind made contact with an intelligence that stretched back through millennia, carrying knowledge that predated the rise of galactic civilization. "Do not resist," the dragon's mental voice whispered directly into Kerathen's consciousness, bypassing the communication equipment entirely. "What you're about to experience has no equivalent in your medical training. Trust in the wisdom that flows between us." In his cell, the dragon's form began to glow with a soft golden radiance that the containment sensors couldn't measure because it existed on frequencies beyond their design parameters. The energy barriers flickered and warped, not from any attempt at escape, but from the sheer presence of forces that had been contained but never truly imprisoned. "By the void," Dr. Zephyra whispered, watching her instruments register impossible readings. "Master Kerathen, your psychic output is off the scales. I'm reading energy patterns that don't match any known cerebrate capabilities." Kerathen's response came not in words, but in waves of understanding that washed over everyone in the medical bay. Suddenly they could all sense what he was experiencing, the dragon's vast consciousness opening like an ancient library, revealing healing techniques that treated not just the body, but the fundamental essence of what it meant to be alive. "The Valthek were not always as they are now," the dragon's mental voice explained, as power flowed between their joined consciousnesses. "Eons ago, when the galaxy was young and species were just learning to reach beyond their homeworlds, they were guardians in truth, not warriors, but healers who protected the innocent through bonds of spiritual connection." Images flowed through the psychic link, visions of ancient Valthek who could heal with touch alone, who understood that consciousness was not contained within the physical form, but spread across quantum dimensions like ripples in a cosmic pond. Guardian Kerathen's people had possessed these abilities once, before war and technology made them forget their gentler gifts. "The weapon that struck him exploited this ancient heritage," the dragon continued, his golden eyes blazing with inner fire even within his prison cell. "It shattered not just his body, but the spiritual connections that allow a guardian to exist across multiple dimensional states. Your healers see only the physical damage because they have forgotten that some wounds can only be treated with the soul." Master Physician Kerathen's consciousness expanded under the dragon's guidance, stretching across space to encompass the 47 refugees scattered throughout the galaxy. Each one appeared in his psychic vision as a point of golden light, holding fragments of Guardian Kerathen's essence, like precious treasures they had guarded without knowing. "Now," the dragon instructed, "show them the path home. Not with technology, but with love, with the same force that allowed their guardian to sacrifice everything for strangers." On New Geneva, Engineer Zexthar gasped as his memory of salvation suddenly blazed with impossible clarity. He could feel Guardian Kerathen's presence as clearly as if the massive Valthek was standing beside him, could sense the fragment of heroic spirit that had been shared in that moment of rescue. On distant Kepler station, young Sarah felt warmth spread through her chest as she remembered golden eyes that had promised safety in the midst of chaos. The memory pulsed with life, and she understood instinctively that she was being asked to give something back, to return a gift that was never meant to be kept. Across the galaxy, 47 beings felt the same recognition, the same understanding. Without hesitation, they opened their hearts and released the fragments of consciousness they had carried, sending them back toward their source with all the gratitude and love they possessed. In Medical Bay Alpha, Guardian Kerathen's biodisplays suddenly erupted with activity. Neural pathways that had been dark for days began to glow with returning consciousness. The quantum disruption in his cellular matrix started to resolve as fragments of his scattered essence found their way home, guided by the collective love of those he had saved. "Impossible," Dr. Morgoth whispered, his crystalline form chiming with harmonics of amazement. "His consciousness is reintegrating. The quantum scarring is healing itself." Dr. Zephyra worked frantically with her forearms, adjusting life support systems and monitoring the rapid changes in her patient's condition. Neural activity is spiking across all sectors. Cellular regeneration has increased by over 300%. Whatever you're doing, don't stop. But even as Guardian Kerathen's physical form began to heal, the effort was taking its toll on his unlikely saviors. Master Physician Kerathen's massive frame shook with the strain of maintaining psychic contact across galactic distances, while 7 levels below, the dragon's golden radiance grew brighter and more unstable. "The path is clear." The dragon's mental voice carried notes of exhaustion and satisfaction. The fragments are returning to their source, but the final step must be Guardian Kerathen's choice. He must decide whether to accept wholeness or remain in the peaceful darkness of unconsciousness. Through the psychic link that connected them all, they could suddenly sense Guardian Kerathen's consciousness stirring in the depths of near death. His awareness touched each of the 47 beings who had remembered him, felt their gratitude and their love, understood the sacrifice that had been made to call him back. And in that moment of perfect connection, Guardian Prime Kerathen of the Valthek Confederation made his choice. His golden eyes opened for the first time in 4 days, focusing immediately on Dr. Zephyr's stunned face. When he spoke, his voice carried the strength of someone who had been touched by the love of 47 souls. "Doctor," he said simply, "I believe I owe you my life." In his cell, 7 levels below, the dragon's golden radiance faded as ancient power returned to dormancy. His consciousness withdrew from the psychic link, leaving behind only the echo of vast satisfaction and the whispered words that only Master Physician Kerathen could hear. "Now you understand, honored healer, that some knowledge is too important to die with those who possess it. Remember what you have learned here and teach others when the need arises." The greatest healing in galactic history was complete, accomplished not through technology, but through the oldest force in the universe, the willingness of beings to love and sacrifice for one another. The medical bay filled with the sounds of celebration as Guardian Kerathen's vital signs stabilized at levels that would have been considered impossible just hours before. His massive form, which had lain motionless for days, now showed the steady rise and fall of natural breathing. The golden ichor that served as his life force flowed with renewed vigor, and the neural activity monitors displayed patterns of conscious, coherent thought. Zephyr moved carefully around the biobed, her forearms conducting a comprehensive examination, with instruments that now registered readings she had never dared hope to see again. "Cellular regeneration is proceeding at optimal rates," she announced, her melodic voice carrying wonder and professional satisfaction. "Neural pathway integration is at 97% and climbing. By every measure we possess, Guardian Kerathen has made a complete recovery." "Not complete," Kerathen said, his voice still weak but growing stronger with each word. "I remember everything that happened. The battle, the weapon's strike, the fragmentation." He paused, his golden eyes focusing on something beyond the physical confines of the medical bay. "I remember being scattered across 47 different points of consciousness. The sensation was indescribable." Dr. Morgeth's crystalline form chimed with curiosity as he approached the biobed. "What do you remember of the healing process? Our instruments recorded the events, but we have no way to measure the subjective experience." Guardian Kerathen slowly raised one massive arm, studying his own hand as if seeing it for the first time. "I remember voices calling to me from across the galaxy, 47 different souls, each one holding a piece of who I am. But more than that, I remember feeling their gratitude, their love, their willingness to give back what I had shared with them in that moment of sacrifice." Master Physician Kerathen, still recovering from his unprecedented psychic exertion, managed a weak mental voice that touched their minds. "The dragon's techniques were extraordinary. I have practiced healing for 7 centuries, but what I experienced today expanded my understanding of consciousness itself. We were not just treating physical damage, we were reweaving the fundamental bonds that connect one being to another." "The dragon," Guardian Kerathen repeated, his expression growing thoughtful. "I sensed his presence throughout the healing, an ancient consciousness, vast beyond measure yet gentle in its application of power. I would like to thank him personally." Dr. Zephyr exchanged glances with the other healers. The dragon's role in Guardian Kerathen's recovery was undeniable, but the implications of that success raised questions that none of them were fully prepared to address. "Guardian," she said carefully, "the dragon is a maximum security prisoner. His file indicates he was responsible for significant destruction during the First Contact Wars. Speaking with him would require special authorization." "What does his file say about why those ships were destroyed?" Kerathen asked, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to asking difficult questions. Dr. Zephyr consulted her portable display, accessing the classified records that Security Chief Malarek had provided. According to the incident reports, the dragon attacked a battle fleet that had opened fire on what they classified as primitive structures on the human homeworld. "Primitive structures," Guardian Kerathen repeated thoughtfully. "And what were these structures, Doctor?" Dr. Zephyra read further, her expression growing troubled. The detailed analysis indicates they were hospitals, refugee centers, schools. She looked up from her display, her large black eyes reflecting dawning understanding. He was protecting non-combatants. A guardian's duty, Kerathen said simply, regardless of species, regardless of the political situation. The protection of innocence takes precedence over all other considerations. He struggled to sit up on the biobed, his movements still careful but determined. This dragon saved my life through knowledge that your entire medical establishment had dismissed or forgotten. The least I can do is express my gratitude in person. Security Chief Malarek, who had remained at the edge of the medical bay throughout the healing process, stepped forward. Guardian, with respect, the containment protocols exist for good reason. Even if the dragon's motives in helping you were genuine, he remains extremely dangerous. As am I, Chief, Kerathen replied, managing a slight smile. Any being capable of holding the line against a Nethrak battle fleet for 6 hours possesses capabilities that could be considered dangerous under the wrong circumstances. The question is not whether someone is powerful, but how they choose to use that power. Doctor, Zephyra found herself caught between conflicting emotions. The dragon had indeed saved Guardian Kerathen's life, demonstrating knowledge and compassion that contradicted everything in his file. But the responsibility for station security couldn't be ignored, even in the face of miraculous healing. Perhaps, she suggested, we could arrange another holographic communication session. Guardian Kerathen could express his gratitude while maintaining all security protocols. That would be acceptable, Kerathen agreed, then paused as another wave of returning memory washed over him. Doctor, during the healing, I sensed something else through the psychic connections. The dragon isn't just ancient, he's lonely. 3 centuries of isolation, with no one to speak with except occasional researchers who saw him as a specimen to be studied. Master Physician Korveth's mental voice carried notes of sadness and understanding. Isolation can be its own form of torture, especially for a consciousness of such vast scope. In my experience, beings capable of great love often suffer most deeply when that love has no outlet. Then we owe him more than gratitude, Guardian Kerathen said, his voice growing stronger as his determination solidified. We owe him the recognition that he is more than the sum of his file entries, more than a prisoner to be contained. The medical bay fell quiet as the implications of the Guardian's words sank in. The dragon had saved a life using methods that the galaxy's finest healers couldn't match or even understand. He had done so without asking for anything in return, from a position of complete powerlessness. But acknowledging his heroism would require confronting uncomfortable questions about the justice of his 3-century imprisonment, about the assumptions that had led to his classification as a dangerous monster, and about what the galaxy might have lost by caging one of its oldest and wisest inhabitants. As Guardian Kerathen's strength continued to return, those questions hung in the air like the echo of ancient wisdom, demanding answers that no one was quite ready to provide. 2 hours later, Guardian Kerathen stood in the observation chamber of Omega Block, his towering form fully recovered and radiating the quiet strength that had made him a legend across the galaxy. The medical team had cleared him for limited activity, though Dr. Zephyra remained nearby with portable monitoring equipment, still amazed by the completeness of his recovery. The holographic communication system activated, projecting Kerathen's image into the dragon's cell while displaying the ancient being's form in the observation chamber. For the first time in 3 centuries, the dragon found himself in conversation with someone who approached him, not as a specimen or a security threat, but as an equal, ancient one, Guardian Kerathen said, inclining his head in a gesture of deep respect. I owe you a debt that can never be fully repaid. You saved my life using knowledge that I thought was lost forever. The dragon's golden eyes fixed on the Guardian, with something that might have been a smile. You owe me nothing, honored Guardian. What I shared with your healers was not a transaction, but a gift freely given. The galaxy is diminished every time a true protector falls to wounds that could have been healed. Your file says you destroyed an entire battle fleet during the First Contact Wars, Kerathen said, his tone carrying no judgment, only curiosity. But the details suggest you were protecting human civilians. Tell me what really happened that day. The dragon was quiet for a long moment, his massive form settling more comfortably onto his coils as ancient memories stirred. The humans were primitives by galactic standards, he said finally. No faster-than-light travel, no energy weapons, no shields. When the Corvani expedition arrived in their system, they saw a world ripe for conquest and colonization. Dr. Zephyra and the other healers listened in fascination as the dragon continued, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had witnessed history firsthand. The humans had one quality that the Corvani underestimated, however. They possessed an extraordinary capacity for both love and courage. When the battle fleet began targeting population centers, human civilians threw themselves into harm's way to protect complete strangers. Parents shielded other people's children. Doctors refused to evacuate hospitals. Teachers died defending schools full of students who weren't even their own. Guardian Kerathen nodded slowly, understanding beginning to dawn in his golden eyes. You recognized something in them. I recognized kindred spirits, the dragon confirmed. Beings who understood that true strength comes not from the power to destroy, but from the willingness to sacrifice everything to protect the innocent. So when the Corvani fleet prepared to bombard the hospitals and schools where humans had gathered their most vulnerable, you intervened, Kerathen finished. I gave them one warning, the dragon said, his voice carrying echoes of ancient authority. I told them to withdraw from the system and find conquest elsewhere. They responded by targeting me with their entire fleet. The dragon's expression grew cold. So I reminded them that some fights are not worth winning. Security Chief Malarek, who had been listening from the observation chamber's security station, accessed his historical databases. The official records list the destruction of the Corvani expedition as an unprovoked attack by a hostile native species. There's no mention of civilian targets or warnings. History, the dragon said with something approaching amusement, is written by those who survive to tell it. The Corvani hegemony preferred not to admit that they lost an entire battle fleet because they were too proud to stop targeting hospitals. Master Physician Korveth, still weakened from his psychic exertions but deeply curious, projected his mental voice into the conversation. Your knowledge of consciousness healing, where did you learn such techniques? The dragon's golden eyes took on a distant quality, as if looking back through eons of memory. From the first beings to achieve true sentience in this galaxy, honored Cerebrit. Dragons are not native to Earth. We are far older than that young world. We came from the void between galaxies, drawn by the first stirrings of conscious life. We have served as guardians and teachers for species across countless worlds. Served? Dr. Morgoth's crystalline form chimed with curiosity. Your species serves others. It is our purpose, the dragon replied simply. We are not conquerors or empire builders. We are gardeners of consciousness, protectors of the innocent, teachers of wisdom to those ready to learn. Every species that develops true sentience eventually faces a choice, whether to use their growing power to dominate others or to protect and nurture life. We try to guide them toward the latter path. Guardian Kerathen felt pieces of an ancient puzzle beginning to fall into place. The healing techniques you taught us, they're not just medical procedures. They're lessons in how conscious beings are truly connected to one another. All consciousness springs from the same source, the dragon confirmed. Every thinking being in this galaxy shares fundamental bonds that transcend species, distance, and time. What you experienced during your healing was not unique. It was simply the first time in centuries that your people have been reminded of these connections. Dr. Zephyra stepped forward, her forearms gesturing as she struggled to process the implications of what she was hearing. If this is true, if consciousness is truly interconnected in the ways you describe, then everything we know about medicine, psychology, even basic biology needs to be reconsidered. Not reconsidered, the dragon said gently. Expanded. Your science is not wrong. It simply focuses on one layer of reality while ignoring others. You have mastered the treatment of symptoms while forgetting the treatment of causes. You can heal bodies magnificently, but you have forgotten how to heal souls. Would you teach us? Guardian Kerathen asked, his voice carrying the hope of someone who had glimpsed possibilities beyond his previous understanding. Would you share these techniques with our healers, help us rediscover what we've lost? The dragon's golden eyes blazed with something that might have been joy, quickly followed by something that was unmistakably sadness. Honored Guardian, I am a prisoner in a cage designed to hold me until the end of time. I have no students, no disciples, no way to pass on what I know except in moments like this, when desperation forces your people to look beyond their preconceptions. The observation chamber fell silent as the weight of those words sank in. Here was a being of vast wisdom and benevolent power, imprisoned not for any crime against innocence, but for protecting them against aggression. The knowledge he possessed could revolutionize medicine, psychology, and their understanding of consciousness itself. And he would die in his cage, taking that knowledge with him, because admitting his innocence would require confronting 3 centuries of assumptions about the nature of heroism and justice. Guardian Kerathen looked around the observation chamber at the faces of beings who had just witnessed a miracle, then turned back to the dragon with an expression of growing determination. "Ancient One," he said formally, "I believe it's time we discuss the terms of your parole." The words hung in the air of the observation chamber like a challenge to 3 centuries of accepted truth. Security Chief Malarek's scarred features tightened as he processed what Guardian Kerathen had just suggested, while Dr. Zephyra's forearms moved in the unconscious gestures of deep concern that her species displayed when facing moral complexity. "Guardian," Malarek said carefully, his military training evident in every measured word, "with all due respect, Prisoner X1 is classified as a Class Omega threat. The containment protocols were established by the Galactic Judicial Council after extensive deliberation. I don't have the authority to even consider modifications to his imprisonment terms." "Then perhaps," Guardian Kerathen replied, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed in matters of life and death, "it's time to contact someone who does have that authority." The dragon watched this exchange with ancient patience, his golden eyes reflecting neither hope nor despair, but something far more complex, the acceptance of one who had long ago learned that justice and law were not always the same thing, and that bureaucracy often moved slower than the needs of the innocent. "Honored Guardian," the dragon said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of centuries, "I appreciate your intentions more than words can express, but I have no desire to create political complications for those who have already done so much. Your healing was gift enough, the opportunity to practice my art again, to save a life that deserved saving. Was it truly enough?" Kerathen asked, turning back to face the holographic image of his unlikely savior. "Ancient One, you possess knowledge that could revolutionize medicine across the galaxy, techniques that could save countless lives, wisdom that could help entire species rediscover their spiritual connections to one another, and yet you remain locked in a cell because 3 centuries ago you chose to protect innocents against military aggression." Dr. Zephyra found herself caught between her medical oath and her growing understanding of the profound injustice they were witnessing. "Guardian Kerathen is right," she said slowly, her melodic voice carrying the weight of scientific conviction. "The healing techniques we observe today could transform how we treat consciousness-related injuries across dozens of species. Quantum soul severance, psychic trauma bonding, dimensional consciousness fragmentation, conditions we've always considered fatal might be treatable with proper knowledge." Master Physician Korveth, his massive form still showing signs of psychic exhaustion from their unprecedented healing work, projected his thoughts carefully into their shared consciousness. "In my 7 centuries of practice, I have encountered perhaps a dozen cases similar to Guardian Kerathen's condition. All resulted in death because we lacked the knowledge to treat quantum consciousness disruption effectively. If the dragon's techniques could be studied, documented, taught to a new generation of healers, thousands of lives could be saved," Dr. Morgoth finished, his crystalline form resonating with harmonics of dawning realization. "Not just guardians who suffer combat trauma, but any being who experiences the severing of spiritual connections due to violence, loss, or dimensional weapons." Security Chief Malarek accessed his command protocols with reluctant fingers, his military training warring with the mounting evidence before his eyes. "Even if I agreed with your assessment, which I'm not officially saying I do, the prisoner's release would require approval from the Galactic Judicial Council, the Interspecies Security Committee, and probably the Senate Military Affairs Board. The bureaucratic process alone could take decades, and that's assuming all parties agree to review a case that's been considered closed for 3 centuries. Then perhaps," said a new voice from the observation chamber's entrance, carrying the unmistakable ring of ultimate authority, "we should find ways to expedite that process." Everyone in the chamber turned as one to see Commander Thexvar of Station Security, entering with measured steps, his massive Brutari frame moving with the controlled grace of a professional warrior who had seen too much combat to waste motion. Behind him walked a figure that caused everyone present to straighten unconsciously, Admiral Kesse Andra of the Galactic Defense Fleet, her pristine uniform bearing the insignia of someone who answered directly to the highest levels of galactic government and whose word could reshape star systems. "Admiral," Guardian Kerathen said, inclining his head in the respectful greeting that one protector offered another. "I wasn't aware you were aboard the station." "I arrived an hour ago," Admiral Kerathen replied, her pale blue skin bearing the ritual scars that marked her as a veteran of the brutal Nexus Wars. Her eyes, sharp with intelligence and hardened by command decisions, swept the observation chamber with professional assessment. "The Valthek High Council requested a personal briefing on your condition and prognosis. Imagine my surprise when I learned that your miraculous recovery involved consulting with a Class Omega prisoner who has been locked in maximum security for 3 centuries. The dragon's golden eyes fixed on the Admiral with interest, but no fear, recognizing in her bearing the marks of someone who had faced impossible choices and lived with their consequences. "Admiral Kerathen," he said, his voice carrying unmistakable recognition despite never having met her. "You commanded the defense of Sanctuary Prime during the Nexus invasion 15 years ago. I remember reading the tactical reports. You held the line against impossible odds to protect civilian evacuation routes, sacrificing 3 battle cruisers to buy time for refugee transports." Admiral Kerathen's eyes widened slightly, her professional composure cracking just enough to show genuine surprise. "How could you possibly know about classified military operations? Those battle reports were sealed at the highest security levels." "Because," the dragon replied with something approaching a gentle smile, "true acts of heroism resonate across dimensions, Admiral. When someone chooses to sacrifice everything to protect innocence, ships, careers, lives, that choice creates ripples in the quantum foam that beings like myself can sense across vast distances. Your defense of Sanctuary Prime saved 2 million civilian lives. Such courage does not go unnoticed by those who understand the true weight of such decisions." The Admiral studied the dragon's holographic image for a long moment, her expression revealing the internal struggle of someone whose carefully constructed worldview was being challenged by inconvenient truths that demanded acknowledgement. "Commander Thexavar briefed me on the healing process during our approach to the station," she said finally, her voice carrying the careful neutrality of someone processing new and potentially explosive information. "According to his reports, you saved Guardian Kerathen's life using knowledge that our finest medical specialists across multiple species couldn't match or even comprehend. You accomplished this from a maximum security cell, with no possibility of personal benefit, reward, or even acknowledgement." "That assessment is correct," the dragon acknowledged with simple dignity. "And your imprisonment file indicates that you were originally confined for destroying a Corvani battle fleet that was conducting what they classified as first contact operations with the human homeworld." "Also correct, though the full context of those operations may not have been preserved in the official records." Admiral Kerathen turned to Security Chief Malarek with the bearing of someone accustomed to having her orders followed without question. "Chief, I want you to compile every available record from the first contact incident. Original sensor logs, communication transcripts, tactical analysis reports, diplomatic correspondence, everything in our archives. I want to know exactly what happened in that system 3 centuries ago." "Admiral, with respect," Malarek began, his webbed fingers hovering uncertainly over his control interfaces, "those records are sealed under Executive Order 2847. They can only be accessed with Senate-level authorization, backed by emergency protocols." "Then it's fortunate," Admiral Kerathen said, producing an official datapad from her uniform with the fluid motion of someone who had wielded such authority many times, "that I carry Senate-level authorization as part of my emergency powers mandate granted after the Nexus conflicts." As Malarek reluctantly began accessing the classified archives that had remained sealed since before most current galactic governments had existed, Dr. Zephyra approached the Admiral with barely contained urgency that overcame her usual diplomatic protocols. "Admiral, regardless of the dragon's legal status or the circumstances of his imprisonment, his knowledge represents an unprecedented opportunity for medical advancement across the entire galaxy. The techniques he demonstrated today could save countless lives, revolutionize our understanding of consciousness itself, and provide healing for conditions we've always considered hopeless." "I understand the implications, Doctor," Admiral Kerathen replied, her tone carrying the weight of someone who had made decisions that affected billions of lives. "But I also understand that if we're going to make any changes to this prisoner's status, changes that could have profound political and legal ramifications, we need to be absolutely certain about the facts of his case." 3 centuries of imprisonment based on falsified or incomplete evidence would represent a miscarriage of justice of staggering proportions. And if the evidence supports his innocence? Guardian Kerathen asked, his voice carrying both hope and the determination of someone who had dedicated his life to protecting the innocent. Admiral Kessandra's pale blue eyes fixed on the dragon's image with the intensity of someone making a decision that would reshape history. Then, Ancient One, we will have a great deal to answer for, and even more to make right. In his cell, the dragon remained patient and still, but those who looked closely could see something stirring in his ancient eyes. Not hope exactly, for he had learned long ago that hope could be a cruel companion. Instead, what stirred was something more fundamental, the recognition that sometimes, against all probability, justice could still emerge from the depths of bureaucratic darkness. The weight of justice, long delayed by politics and convenience, was finally beginning to tip toward truth. The observation chamber filled with the soft glow of holographic displays as Security Chief Malarek accessed archives that had been sealed for 3 centuries. Data streams cascaded across multiple screens, showing sensor logs, communication transcripts, and battle analysis reports from the incident that had led to the dragon's imprisonment. Admiral Kessandra stood with her arms crossed, her pale blue features set in the expression of someone prepared to confront uncomfortable truths. Guardian Kerathen remained beside the holographic communication array, his golden eyes fixed on the dragon's image with growing understanding and sympathy. "Initial contact logs are coming online," Malarek reported, his webbed fingers dancing across the control interfaces. Corvani Expedition Fleet, commanded by War Admiral Thex Mori. Mission parameters. He paused, his expression growing troubled. Mission parameters classified the human homeworld as Class 5 primitive, suitable for resource extraction and population displacement. Dr. Zephyra felt her chest constrict as the implications sank in. They classified Earth as a target for conquest and genocide. "It appears so," Malarek confirmed, his voice growing quieter as he read further. "The expedition was authorized to use necessary force to eliminate organized resistance and relocate surviving populations to mining colonies in the Outer Rim." Admiral Kessandra's jaw tightened. "Continue with the battle logs, Chief. I want to see exactly what happened when they encountered resistance." The holographic displays shifted to show tactical readouts from the Corvani fleet's sensors. 3-dimensional models of Earth appeared in the air, with red markers indicating the locations of major population centers. Guardian Kerathen watched with growing horror as the tactical analysis revealed the fleet's true intentions. According to the Corvani battle computers, Malarek read, initial bombardment targets included major hospitals, schools, and civilian shelter complexes. The rationale given was elimination of resistance breeding centers and population concentration points. "They were planning to murder children," Dr. Morgoth said, his crystalline form resonating with horrified harmonics. "They classified schools and hospitals as military targets." In his cell, the dragon's golden eyes blazed with the memory of ancient fury. "War Admiral Thex Mori was of the old Corvani military philosophy," he said, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had witnessed too much cruelty. "They believed that the most efficient way to conquer a species was to eliminate their capacity for future resistance by targeting the young, the sick, and the vulnerable. And you intervened," Admiral Kessandra said, her tone carrying no judgment, only the desire to understand. "I gave them one chance," the dragon confirmed. "I appeared before their flagship and offered them a choice: withdraw from the system and find conquest elsewhere, or face the consequences of targeting innocents." War Admiral Thex Mori's response was to order all ships to open fire on me, while simultaneously beginning bombardment of the surface targets. Malarek's fingers stopped moving across the controls as he found the relevant sensor logs. "Admiral, you need to see this." The communication logs show an encrypted message from the Dragon to the Corvani flagship, transmitted on standard diplomatic frequencies. The timestamp shows it was sent 17 minutes before the first shots were fired. "Display the message, Chief." The holographic array shifted to show the decoded communication, a formal diplomatic warning delivered in perfect Corvani military protocol. "To War Admiral Thex Mori of the Corvani Expedition Fleet. You are engaging in acts of aggression against non-combatant civilian targets. By the ancient laws that govern the protection of innocents across all species, I offer you this single opportunity to withdraw from this system. Continued targeting of civilians will result in defensive action. Choose wisely. The observation chamber fell silent as the full implications became clear. The dragon had not attacked without warning. He had followed proper diplomatic protocols, even while facing a fleet intent on genocide. The battle analysis shows that the dragon maintained defensive posture until the moment the Corvani fleet opened fire on the surface targets. Malarek continued, his voice heavy with the weight of revealed truth. Only then did he engage in offensive action. Admiral Kerathen studied the tactical displays with the eye of someone who had commanded fleets in multiple conflicts. The sensor logs show him systematically disabling ships rather than destroying them outright. He was trying to minimize casualties even while defending the civilian population. Until the Corvani activated their planet-killer weapon, the dragon said quietly. When they prepared to crack the planet's crust and boil away the oceans rather than accept defeat, I was forced to be less restrained in my response. Guardian Kerathen felt something cold settle in his chest as he realized the full scope of what had really happened 3 centuries ago. You weren't just protecting human civilians, you were preventing planetary genocide. The Corvani War Admiral preferred to destroy the entire world rather than return to his superiors and admit that a single being had forced his retreat, the dragon confirmed. I could not allow that to happen. Dr. Zephyra looked around the observation chamber at the faces of beings who were coming to terms with a profound injustice. So the official records were falsified. They made it seem like an unprovoked attack on a peaceful exploration fleet. The surviving Corvani officers needed to explain how they lost an entire battle group, Admiral Kerathen said grimly. Claiming they were attacked by a savage native species was more acceptable than admitting they were stopped while attempting genocide. Master Physician Korveth's mental voice touched their minds with waves of sadness and understanding, and so, a guardian became classified as a monster, and a hero was imprisoned as a criminal. The real crime was covered up to protect the reputation of those who committed it. Admiral Kerathen turned to face the dragon's holographic image directly. Ancient One, I speak with the authority of the Galactic Defense Fleet and the Senate Military Committee. On behalf of the galactic government, I formally apologize for the injustice you have suffered. Your imprisonment was based on falsified records and perjured testimony. You are not a criminal. You are a hero who has been denied recognition for 3 centuries. The dragon's golden eyes reflected something that might have been relief, mixed with the complex emotions of one who had waited far too long for vindication. Your apology is accepted, Admiral, though it was never required. I acted according to my nature and my duty. I would make the same choice again if faced with similar circumstances. I know you would, Admiral Kerathen replied, and that's exactly why the galaxy needs beings like you, free to make those choices when the need arises. She turned to Security Chief Malarek with an expression of firm resolve. Chief, prepare the release authorization codes. By my authority as Admiral of the Fleet, and under the emergency justice protocols, I am ordering the immediate release of prisoner X1. The charges against him are hereby dismissed and expunged from all official records. For the first time in 300 years, the energy barriers around the dragon's cell began to power down. The energy barriers that had confined the dragon for 3 centuries flickered and died with a sound like distant thunder. For the first time since the rise and fall of entire civilizations, the ancient being was free to move beyond the confines of his cell. He rose slowly, his massive form uncoiling with careful deliberation. Centuries of confinement had left him stiff, but the fundamental grace of his species remained undiminished. His golden eyes swept the cell that had been both prison and home, memorizing every detail before he stepped through the doorway that had been sealed for longer than most species had possessed written language. The observation chamber's blast doors opened, and Guardian Kerathen entered the detention level proper for the first time. The dragon stood in the corridor outside his former cell, his massive presence filling the space but radiating no threat, only the patient dignity of one who had endured injustice with grace and emerged from it with his honor intact. Ancient One, Guardian Kerathen said, approaching with the respect due to an equal, I find myself without adequate words to express my gratitude. You saved my life, and in doing so you may have saved the lives of countless others who will benefit from the healing knowledge you possess. The dragon inclined his great head in acknowledgement. Your gratitude honors me, Guardian Kerathen, but it was not gratitude I sought. I acted because it was right to act, because healing is always preferable to death, because knowledge shared multiplies, while knowledge hoarded dies with its keeper. Admiral Kerathen stepped forward, her pale blue features set in an expression of formal ceremony. Ancient One, the galactic government owes you far more than an apology. 3 centuries of your life were stolen based on lies and political convenience. While we cannot return that time to you, we can ensure that your freedom comes with the resources and recognition you deserve. What I deserve, the dragon replied with something approaching amusement, is the opportunity to continue my work as a guardian and teacher. Material possessions have little meaning to one who measures time in eons. Dr. Zephyra moved closer, her forearms gesturing with excitement despite her attempt to maintain professional composure. Your healing techniques, would you truly be willing to share them with our medical community? The potential applications could revolutionize how we treat consciousness-related injuries across dozens of species. The dragon's golden eyes warmed with something that was unmistakably joy. Honored physician, that knowledge was never meant to be hoarded. I would be delighted to work with your healers to establish training protocols and treatment methodologies. But understand, these techniques cannot be learned from textbooks or computer simulations. They require direct teaching, master to student, consciousness touching consciousness. Master Physician Kerathen's mental voice projected waves of eager anticipation. You would take students, train a new generation of healers in these ancient arts, if they are willing to learn not just techniques but wisdom, the dragon confirmed. If they understand that true healing treats not just symptoms but souls, not just bodies, but the connections that bind all conscious life together. Dr. Morgeth's crystalline form chimed with curiosity. Where would you establish such a school? Most medical facilities lack the space for beings of your substantial physical requirements. The dragon was quiet for a moment, his consciousness touching the quantum foam of space itself, sensing possibilities and probabilities across the galaxy. There is a dead world in the Kepler system, he said finally. Kepler 442c. Once it harbored a great civilization, but they destroyed themselves in war a millennium ago. The planet is healing now, returning to life. It would serve as an appropriate location for teaching others about restoration and renewal. Admiral Kerathen consulted her portable display, accessing stellar cartographic data. That world is currently unclaimed territory. I have the authority to grant you settlement rights and establish a medical research facility under Galactic Defense Fleet protection. That would be acceptable, the dragon said, and for the first time in 3 centuries, something approaching happiness entered his ancient voice. Guardian Kerathen felt a stirring of possibility that went beyond personal gratitude. Ancient One, the galaxy faces many challenges, species torn by war, civilizations driven to the brink of extinction, beings who have forgotten what it means to protect rather than dominate. Your wisdom could help heal more than just individual patients. Healing takes many forms, Guardian Kerathen, the dragon acknowledged. Sometimes it requires medicine and technique. Sometimes it requires justice and truth. And sometimes it requires nothing more than reminding people of connections they never truly lost. As if summoned by his words, a communication alert chimed through the station's internal network. Dr. Zephyra activated the incoming message, and suddenly the observation chamber filled with holographic images from across the galaxy. 47 different faces representing the refugees whose gratitude had called Guardian Kerathen back from the edge of death. "Guardian?" called a young human voice. Sarah from Kepler Station, now older, but her eyes still bright with the memory of golden eyes that had promised safety. "We heard about what happened, about how you were healed. We wanted you to know. All of us, from every world where you saved us, we remember. We remember your sacrifice, and we remember what it means to have someone willing to give everything to protect strangers." Similar voices joined in from across the galaxy, a chorus of gratitude that spanned species and star systems. Engineers and farmers, teachers and children, beings who had built new lives because one guardian had chosen their safety over his own. The dragon watched this outpouring of love and remembrance with the satisfaction of one who had orchestrated not just a healing, but a reminder of what truly mattered in a universe often consumed by conflict and conquest. "Heyosi," he said quietly to Guardian Kerathen, "the connections were never truly broken. They simply needed to be remembered." As the messages of gratitude continued to pour in from across the galaxy, the dragon looked toward the transparent viewports that showed the stars beyond Station Zerion 7. Soon he would walk beneath open sky again, would feel the wind of a living world, and the warmth of a sun on his scales. But more importantly, he would once again have students to teach, wisdom to share, and the opportunity to prove that some knowledge was too precious to die in cages. The ancient Guardian was free, and the galaxy would be changed forever by the healing arts he carried in his memory and the compassion he held in his ancient heart. 20 healers had failed to save a dying Guardian. One dragon prisoner had seen what they missed, that true healing begins not with the body, but with the soul, and that the greatest medicine in the universe is the willingness of conscious beings to love and sacrifice for one another. The age of forgotten wisdom was ending. The age of renewed connection had begun.